Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Eggerding and you're watching the 6th video for this unit, and we're going to talk about polynomial inequalities. We've been talking about how to find the zeros of polynomials. We've talked about graphing them, and we're actually going to take those two ideas and put them together. But the first kind of polynomial that we actually learned how to solve was a quadratic inequality that we did first semester. And there were two ways we took a look at it. The first way that we took a look at it was to factor and find the zeros. And so this one would factor x minus 5, x minus 2, and it gives us the zeros of 5 and 2. And then the second thing we would do that is we would make a number line to test the regions, to test to see where this thing will be less than 0. In other words, where is this going to be negative? And so if I make my number line and I put my two zeros on there, 2 and 5, it tests into 3 regions. And what I need to do is pick a number in each region to decide, hold on, changing color, green, to test where this polynomial is going to be positive or negative. So for example, over here, if I test x equals 0 and I plug it in, I do 0 minus 5 times 0 minus 2, I'm going to get a positive value. If I test something between 2 and 5, say 3, and I do 3 minus 5 and 3 minus 2, I'm going to get a negative value. And if I test a number bigger than 5, say 6, and I do 6 minus 5 times 6 minus 2, I again get a positive value. What my solution is the original one said I wanted it less than or equal to 0. That's the negative part. The negative part is in between 2 and 5, and I am including both of those, and there's the solution to that inequality. Another way we talked about looking at this is we could look at the graph of this quadratic. It's going to be a parabola with x-intercepts at 2 and 5, and it opens up, and so a quick little sketch looks something like this. And if I want to talk about the things that are less than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 0 implies things are below the x-axis, because those y-coordinates are negative. In other words, all of this part. And again, what x values? Those are all the x values between 2 and 5, just like we found doing it algebraically. Okay? So there were two ways to look at it. One is the algebraic way of factoring, finding the zeros, and making a number line to test to find your solution. The other way is observing the graph and seeing where it was below the x-axis. So we're going to take that idea and we're going to talk about polynomial inequalities. Again, we're going to determine the zeros and we're going to test those intervals. And so over here we have a polynomial, 4x minus x cubed. Okay, and here's the factored version. It has a greatest common factor of x, and then that'll factor 2 minus x and 2 plus x. So I actually, for part 1, determining the zeros, they are at 0, 2, and negative 2. So on this graph down here I have 0, 2, and negative 2. So if I want to test these intervals, I'm going to put all three of these numbers on my number line. And this time I've created more than 3 regions. I've created 1, 2, 3. I have 4 regions. And I want to look where this thing is greater than 0. In other words, where is this positive? I can use the graph to help me, and I can also test it numerically. So numerically, let's see over on this side, if I test x equals, say, -3, and I plug it in to -3, 2 minus -3, 2 plus -3, I'm going to get a negative times a positive times a negative. It is going to get a positive. Just like it is on the graph, it's above the x-axis, so it's positive. If I test x equals -1, I'm going to get a negative times a positive times a positive. Leaves me with a negative. Again, it's all this stuff below the x-axis. Testing +1, if I plug it in, I get 1 times 2 minus 1 times 2 plus 1. It's a positive times another positive times another positive. This interval will be positive, just like it shows on the graph. It's all above the x-axis. The last interval is going to be negative. Since I want strictly greater than 0, my intervals are going to be from -infinity to -2, and the interval from 0 to 2. And that would be my final answer. So again, we're going to use the polynomial. We're going to use the factored form of the polynomial to find those zeros. And then you have a choice. You can either use your graph to look at where things are positive or negative, or you can go ahead and test your number line. Make sure you bring your questions to class on this. We're only going to ask you to take a look at 2 questions on page 345. It's numbers 83 and 84. There's also an entrance slip for video 6. It's another question real similar to this. I'd recommend checking your bookwork first before you try the entrance slip. Thanks, and we'll talk to you later.